Hi, my dear students. Today in English literature, we are going to learn our lesson number 4, that is The Great Train Journey by Ruskin Bond. He is an Indian author of British descent. He lives in Missouri. The Indian Council for Child Education has recognized his role in the growth of children's literature in India. He got the Sahitya Academy Award in 1992 for Our Trees Still Grow in Dhera for his published work in English. He was awarded Padma Shri as well as Padma Bhushan. The Great Train Journey. Suraj waved to a passing train and kept waving until only the spiraling smoke remained. He liked waving to trains. He wondered about the people in them and about where they were going and what it would be like there. And when the train had passed, leaving behind only the hot, empty track, Suraj was lonely. He was a little lonely now. His hands in his pockets, he wandered along the railway track, kicking at loose pebbles and sending them down the bank. Soon there were other tracks, a railway siding, a stationary goods train. The carriage doors were closed, and as there were no windows, he couldn't see inside. He looked around to see if he was observed, and then, satisfied that he was alone, began trying the doors. He was almost at the end of the train when a carriage door gave way to his thrust. It was dark inside the carriage. Suraj stood outside in the bright sunlight, peering into the darkness, trying to recognize bulky, shapeless objects. He stepped into the carriage and felt around. The objects were crates, and through the cross section of the woodwork he felt straw. He opened the door, and the sun streamed into the compartment, driving out the musty darkness. Suraj sat down on a packing case, his chin cupped in his hands. The school was closed for summer holidays, and he had been wandering about all day and still did not know what to do with himself. The carriage was bare of any sort of glamour. Passing trains fascinated him. Moving trains, crowded trains, shrieking, panting trains all fascinated him. But this smelly, dark compartment filled him only with gloom and more loneliness. He did not really look gloomy or lonely. He looked fierce at times when he glared out at people from under his dark eyebrows, but otherwise, he usually wore a contented look, and no one could guess just how deep his thoughts were. Perhaps, if he had company, some fun could be had in the carriage. If there had been a friend with him, someone like Ranji. He looked at the crates. He was always curious about things that were bolted or nailed down or in some way concealed from him. Things like parcels and locked rooms and carriage doors and crates. Just like you all, he is also like that. If something is packed and kept, he is very curious to know what is there inside, whether it is a room or a parcel. He went from one crate to another, and soon his perseverance was rewarded. The cover of one hadn't been properly nailed down. Wow, one is not packed properly. So think what he might have done. Suraj got his fingers under the edge and raised up the lid. Absorbed in his operation, he did not notice the slight shudder that passed through the train. He plunged his hands into the straw and pulled out an apple. It was a dark ruby red apple, and it lay in the dusty palm of Suraj's hand like some gigantic precious stone, smooth and round and glowing in the sunlight. Suraj looked up out of the doorway and thought he saw a tree walking past the train. What does it mean? Tree is walking, which means the train is moving. He dropped the apple and stared. There was another tree and another, all walking past the door with increasing rapidity. Suraj stepped forward but lost his balance and fell on his hands and knees. The floor beneath him was vibrating. The wheels were clattering on the rails and the carriage was swaying. The trees were running now, swooping past the trains, and the telegraph poles joined them in the crazy race. Crouching on his hands and knees, Suraj stared out of the open door and realized that the train was moving fast, moving away from his home and puffing into the unknown. He crept cautiously to the door and looked out. The ground seemed to rush away from the wheels. He couldn't jump. Was there, he wondered, any way of stopping the train? He looked around the compartment again, only crates of apples. He would not starve. That was one consolation. He picked up the apple he had dropped and pulled a crate nearer to the doorway. Sitting down, he took a bite from the apple and stared out of the open door, which means he is inside the compartment now. How he will reach home? Just think, he is stuck over there. Greetings, friend, said a voice from behind, and Suraj spun round guiltily, his mouth full of apple. A dirty, bearded face was looking out at him from behind a pile of crates. The mouth was open wide, pan-stained grin. Namaste, said Suraj apprehensively. Who are you? The man stepped out from behind the crates and confronted the boy. I will have one of those too, he said, pointing to the apple. Suraj gave the man an apple and stood his ground while the carriage rocked on the rails. The man took a step forward, lost his balance, and sat down on the floor. And where are you going, friend? He asked. Have you a ticket? No, said Suraj. Have you? The man pulled at his beard and mused upon the question but did not answer it. He took a bite from the apple and said, No, I don't have a ticket, but I usually reserve this compartment for myself. This is the first time I have had a company. Where are you going? Are you a hippie like me? I don't know, said Suraj. Where does the train go? The scrubby ticketless traveler looked concerned for a moment and said, Where do you want to go? I want to go everywhere, said Suraj. I want to go to England and China and Africa and Greenland. I want to go all over the world. Then you are on the right train, said the man. This train goes everywhere. First, it will take you to the sea, and there you will have to get onto the ship if you want to go to China. How do I get on a ship? Asked Suraj. The man, who had been fumbling about in the folds and pockets of his shabby clothes, produced a packet of beedies and a box of matches and began smoking the aromatic leaf. Can you cook? He asked. Yes, said Suraj untruthfully. Can you scrub a deck? Why not? Can you sail a ship? I can sail anything, said Suraj. Then you will go to China, said the man. He leaned back against a crate, stuck his dirty feet up on another crate, and puffed contentedly at his biddy. Suraj finished his apple, took another from the crate, and dug his teeth into it. Means he started eating. He took aim with the core of the old apple and tried to hit a telegraph pole, but missed it by meters. It wasn't the same as throwing a cricket ball. Then, to make the apple more interesting, he began to take big bites to see if he could devour it in 3 mouthfuls. But it took him 4 bites to finish the apple, so he started on another. Suraj had always wanted to be in a train that would take him to strange new places over hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. And here was a train doing just that. And he wasn't quite sure if it was what he really wanted. The train was coming to a station. The engine whistle slowed down. The number of railway lines increased, spread out in different directions. Before the train could come to a stop, Suraj's companion came to the door and jumped to the ground. You'd better keep out of sight if you don't want to be caught, he warned him. And waving his hand, he disappeared into the jungle across the railway tracks. The train was at siding and Suraj couldn't see any signs of life. But he heard voices and sound of carriage doors being opened and closed. He suspected that the apples wouldn't stay in the compartment much longer. So he stuffed one into each pocket and climbed on to a wooden rack in a corner. Presently, men's voices were heard in the doorway. Two laborers stepped into the compartment and began moving the crates towards the door, where they were taken over by others. Soon, the compartment was empty. Suraj waited until the man had gone away before coming down from the rack. After about 5 minutes, the train started again. It shunted up and down, then gathered speed and went rushing across the plain. Suraj felt a thrill of anticipation. Where would they be going now? He wondered what his parents would do when he failed to come home that night. They would think he had run away or been kidnapped or been involved in an accident. They would have the police out and there would be search parties. Suraj would be famous, the boy who disappeared. The train came out of the jungle and passed fields of sugarcane and villages of mud huts. Children shouted and waved to the train, though there was no one in it except Suraj, the guard and the engine driver. Suraj waved back. Usually he was in a field waving. Today he was actually on the train. He was beginning to enjoy the ride. The train would take him to the sea. There would be ships and funnels and ships with sails, and might even be one to take him across the ocean to some distant land. He felt a bit sorry for his mother and father. They would miss him. They would believe he had been lost forever, but one day, a fortune made, he would return home and then nobody would care any more about school reports and what he ate and why he came home late, etc. etc. Ranji, his friend, would be waiting for him at the station and Suraj would bring him back a present. An Africa line, perhaps, or a transistor radio. But he wished Ranji was with him now. He wished the ragged hippie was still with him. An adventure was always more fun when one had company. He had finished both apples by the time the train showed signs of reaching another station. This time it seemed to be moving into the station itself, not just a siding. It passed a lot of signals and buildings and advertisement boards before slowing to a halt beside a white familiar platform. Suraj looked out of the door and caught sight of the board bearing the station's name. He was so astonished that he almost fell out of the compartment. He was back at his hometown. After traveling 40 or 50 miles, here he was home again. He couldn't understand it. The train hadn't turned off, that he was certain, and it hadn't been moving backward. He was certain of that too. He climbed out of the compartment and looked up and down the platform. Yes, the engine had changed ends. It was only the local Apple train. Suraj glowered angrily at everyone on the platform. It was as though the rest of the world had played a trick on him. He made his way to the waiting room and slipped into the street through the back door. He did not want a ticket collector asking him awkward questions. It had been a free ride, and with that he comforted himself. Shrugging his shoulders, Suraj sauntered down the road to the bazaar. Luckily, he reached back. But imagine if the train hadn't reached back. What should have happened? Just think of it. Okay? Now, he is sad only because he reached back to his hometown. And he's saying, someday he thought he would take a train and really go somewhere. and he would buy a ticket just to make sure of getting there. I'm going everywhere, he said fiercely. I'm going everywhere and no one can stop me, which means he is upset and angry that he reached back, but he wishes to travel all over the world. Hope you have understood the story. Now let's go to the textbook exercise part. Question answers as usual. Please refer the notes for that. And in the next page, question number 2, look at these words. Okay, which one is odd one out? Why? All these words means eat only, but we use that in different situations. So you need to frame a sentence using the same. For example, nibble, nibble. Nibble also means to eat only. So the sentence is given, I always nibble chocolate to make it last longer. Same way you need to frame another sentences also with the words given over there. Next part, working with words. Fill in the blanks with suitable words from the list below. Okay, there are some words given. Can you just have a look? Astonished, anticipation, stationary, increase, sauntered and awkward. So A. Question number A. Soon there were other tracks, a railway siding, a dash, goods, train. So what will come there? Stationary. All the sentences given over here are from the story itself, so please solve it yourself. Now the next part is collective nouns. This is a topic which we have already studied in our language first lesson, right? Collective nouns. Collective nouns are the names of groups of persons and things of the same kind. So I am going to give you this as your homework because we have already learned this in language lesson 1. Anyway, the first few examples I am solving. Collective noun for sheep, that is flock or herd, and a group of people gathered in church, that is congregation, and for ship, group of ship is fleet. And the remaining you are going to solve it yourself. Now let's go to the next page, that is abstract nouns. This also we have studied already in language, but let's revise it. Abstract nouns are the names of states or qualities possessed by people or things. We cannot touch these qualities as we can touch the concrete objects. So pick out the abstract nouns from the following. Cart, C-A-R-T, cart, lightness, pride, victory, friendliness, peace, poem, machine. In this, what is an abstract noun? So, to find out an abstract noun, you should know the difference between concrete and abstract, okay? So, abstract is something which we can feel. So, I am going to pick 2 from this, remaining you are going to do. That is pride, P-R-I-D-E, that is pride, it's a feeling or an emotion we can say. Same way peace, P-E-A-C-E, peace. Remaining you are going to solve. Now form abstract nouns from the following adjectives. So free is an adjective, so the noun will be freedom. And for thin, thinness, sweet, sweetness. Same way you need to form the abstract nouns. Now the next question, state what quality is possessed by a person who is kind. When a person is kind, the quality is kindness. Tidy, tidiness. If a person is helpful, he is having which quality? Helpfulness. If when a person is lazy, that is laziness. Same way, please solve the remaining 4 also. Next is verbs. Verbs are the words that tell us about the actions or states of being. So when you look at a dictionary, you can see that for verbs they will be writing we. Like I think you might have observed this. So here what we have to do is pick out the verbs in the following sentences. The first one, the children crowded round the teacher. So here the verb is crowded. Second one, the children in the crowd shouted and cheered. Here it is shouted and cheered. In the first word, crowded was the verb. But in the second word, crowd is used as a noun only, but the verb is shouted and cheered. Same way, please solve question C to H. Okay, And what you have to remember is that quite often we use more than one word to form a verb, like is drinking, was drinking, had drunk, had been drinking, will have been drinking. And these verbs like is, was, has, had been, these all are called as auxiliary verbs. And now, next, there is a list of words given. Please read it aloud. And in the composition part, write a brief 2-paragraph description of each of the main characters in the story. In your first paragraph, you can describe about the physical appearance. And in the imagination you need to use, and in the second paragraph say what they are like, the way they behave and think, their personalities, etc. So please write that and try. I hope you all have understood the chapter. See you in the next class. Thank you.